Welcome everyone. This is a tutorial about how to use the pod blueprints and how to place the multiple miners on the nodes using Satisfactory Calculator. So as a quick overview, the pods themselves, the blueprints themselves, are pretty well structured. We've got our stairs, the pod shell itself, which is our core component in terms of our shell around the actual miners and, you know, what makes everything look nice and pretty. And we've also got the nitrogen gas one, which is not limited just to nitrogen gas. This is for those pressure ones with the pressure extraction. That will be a separate tutorial on how to use those. It's also, you know, sort of later game or sort of mid-tier game. And then we've got our logistics modules for ore and oil. So these will use those standard ore nodes as well. Or sorry, oil nodes, where we'll also place 20 oil extractors on those nodes. It'll be the same principle as we're going to do for the copper ore today. So just to go into the actual blueprints themselves, so this is the pod shell. It's got the electricity connections, so the power connections, all that sort of thing for the miners. And then, you know, we've got that shell around, so it's got everything that you need, and you can actually rotate that on a spot. It's equally balanced, so rotation won't be a problem. Each of the corners, we've got a point for power, so we can connect the power to the pod, which will then power the miners inside. There are 20 connectors, so you can connect each of the miners to their own connector, but with 1.2 coming, we've got the daisy chain feature built in, so you can be able to daisy chain all your miners. I currently use a daisy chain mod for that, so, you know, there's just that, but that'll go away as we've got the 1.2 coming when 1.2 gets released shortly, I think pretty soon. And then with that, we've got our pod stairs, so this latches onto the side of the pod. We'll put those on now just so you can have a look how that works. And then the individual ore modules. I've got the Mark II, Mark III, Mark IV, and then obviously the 2 oil versions. These are all dependent on what you've unlocked. You can actually place them even as a blueprint. You just won't be able to, you know, connect unless you've actually unlocked the Mark III or Mark IV. You won't be able to connect Mark III and Mark IV belts to the pod, but you'll have a Mark III, Mark IV structure. So technically, if you've got the resources, you would be able to place your Mark IV on top of the pod shell, and you'd have your ability to have all that sorted out and ready for full upgrade later down the line. So the 10, 20, 5, 10, and 20 are your outputs. So it's basically 20 miners in with 20 out. Or in the case of the 10, 20 in, 10 out. And these are all load balanced within the module itself. So we can actually see that I've got everything all hooked up there. And that load balances out from the 20 down to the 10. In the case of the 10, or down to 5. So this is so that you can try and maximize the capacity of the belts from the node that you're on. It's originally designed around the whole scope of impure being the 5, normal being the 10, and then pure being 20. So that's if you're not overclocking. If you're overclocking, obviously then you can go towards the 20 side and you can max out your belts that way. So, with that sort of description done, just so that you can have a look, the oil module is fairly similar in its structure. The 6 uses Mark II pumps, so just something for you. The 600 uses Mark II pumps, so just something for you to consider in terms of unlocks and resources. And then obviously the 300 just uses the standard Mark I pumps. There you can see the standard Mark I pumps. And they're all connected already. They all daisy chained together, so you don't have to worry about that too much. You just need to connect one of them to the main hookup on the the node on the mod on the pod. So, oh yes, all the pods make use heavily of a mod called structural solutions. So that is one caveat. You will need that mod, as well as the infinite nudge mod. So we've got structural solutions. So this mod you can find on the Fixit app, as well as infinite nudge. I've got it here somewhere. There it is. So infinite nudge allows us to be able to nudge beyond the standard vanilla nudge, so that you can, be able to place it correctly and not have a problem. All right. So now with onto the actual placement of things. So what we will do, because we're using the standard or the infrastructure, the structural solutions mod heavily, we want to use a foundation that is fundamentally different from that of what's in there, because otherwise we won't be able to find it easily in the Satisfactory calculator. So for that, I'll just use the standard foundation. So what we'll do is we'll use the control key to lock it to the world grid. I'm just going to hold it there for a moment. So it is key that you do lock to the world grid, because you will be placing you will be realigning the miners or extractor to that block. Otherwise you will not be able to line up the pod shell and obviously the subsequent component very easily to the miners. This just keeps everything aligned to the grid, makes sure that you do get everything coupled up nicely, and that things do connect correctly. Now, in the instance where you say got a node that's close to a rock structure, for example, and that's going to cut into the pod, because you're locked to the grid, you can actually move this further out, say for example over there, and that would then allow you to place, because you'll realign the miners onto this, so you'll keep everything nicely aligned to the world grid. Yes, you'll be off the node technically, but once we've attached the miners and then moved them across, the game still recognizes it as being there, so there won't be any issues on that side of things. But in this case, we don't need to do that, so we'll just lock it in place and place it. So that's the center point. That's what will work. Now, if I, just as an example, I try to place a miner, you'll actually see that we are not centered on the block. And that's the key part. This block will solve, or this foundation will allow us to align things beautifully, that when we actually place it and get the pod in, that everything will connect easily. So now we'll place our blueprint first, our pod shell. So this is where we're going to attach to the side. The mode doesn't really matter. The default works perfectly well. It actually works best with the default mode. So we'll just lock that in place with H. So we've got that nicely lined up. You can see that it's the center of the beam on that side, and we've got that placed nice and neatly there. Now, it is 21 nudges to the center. So what we'll do is I'm just going to face this way, and I'm going to use that down arrow, and I'm going to nudge it back 21 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 21. Sorry, 21. I think I said, did I say 20? It's 21 nudges. Alright? So 21 nudges, this will now actually be center place. So we just bring it down, we page down, so we get the glitch through, and that actually places it perfectly. Now you can be able to check that by you see the spacing from the edge of our foundation is going to be the same on each one of the corners. So we want that there. Now you could place it lower if you wanted to. That's perfectly okay, because you're just going to be connecting it there, but you're going to have a bigger gap, and then it's not going to look so great on the inside. So we'll just have it lined up to the top of this foundation, and we place it down. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use, all the modules modules and the pod itself uses the SS Paintable Metal theme. So I have not customized the actual theme that it's used. I'm not using any one of the other swatches. I'm still using the standard one, and I'm just going to set my light just so we can see it nicely. So there you can see it's all placed, and the spacing is perfect on each one of these corners, and that's critical. We have to get that lined up, because if this is not aligned to the center foundation, then obviously our miners are not aligned. We're going to have a serious problem connecting it to the module. Alright, so what we can do is we can actually place our module now. So I'm going to go with the Mark III. I should be able to place the Mark III. I've got enough resources for that. And you can see we line it up on the inside. So what we're looking for is we want our floor there to be lined up with our red. So that will be more or less centered. We've got to actually move it over. You can see it's hanging over the edge there a little bit. But now that we've got it locked in, so the key thing will be to figure out, I'm using the 10. I want the 20 actually. Let's go with that. There we go. So if we just lock it in there, you can see that's where our exit is going to be, but that's fine. We'll sort that out just now. What we want to do first is we want to point to a door, and we want to line it up with our red our wall pieces there. So if I just lock it in, you can see it's actually glitching through on the one side. So all I want to do is just want to tap it back once or forward, depending on whichever direction you're facing, and that should be perfect. Now what you can do is you can just head up the ladder here, and you can double check alignment. Oops. So our alignment looks good. We just keep going a little bit. So you can see, I didn't mean to go all the way. See, there's no gaps there. So if I paged up a little bit, you see there's an actual gap. We don't want that gap at the top. We want that gap closed. So if you had to page it down, you'll see that our foundations clip through the glass, which is what we don't want. So we just page up one, and everything should be... No, I think I've lost the alignment. No, it looks right. Is that... actually, no, it's slightly off. So let's just go and replace that. Oh, well, since we're out here, before we do that, pod stairs. So we want to change this mode to blueprint, and we're gonna point at the door. Use a control key to lock it in, to bring it forward or lock it in place. Rotate it so we face it there. Press H to lock it, and we're going to move it forward until we turn yellow, and then one back. And we're going to repeat that on each one of these sides. So C, rotate in so it's facing the correct direction. H key to lock, and in until we turn yellow, and then one back. So same thing again, and one back. Rotate it in, one back. And that places the stairs nicely lined up to the pod, and that'll be the same on all four sides. So, and then from there we can obviously do our cleanup, where we can extend up our walls down to make it all nice and pretty. So that one down there, and we can do some general cleanup. Let's just do that. Okay. And we can place the main one under there. So that cleans that up nicely, and we can add additional stairs, whatever the case may be, and we can do some additional finessing to make it all nice and neat. But we won't worry about that too much here. So let's go back inside. And we're going to place our chosen logistics module. I would change our mode to default. Alright, so I wonder if no. Alright, so we're going to aim it for there. So we actually need to drop it down a little bit. So first of all, because we're slightly unaligned, I'm going to bring it across. It actually looks like it should be good. So we just go up and we check. See there, now it's locked in correctly. See the alignment. I'm not too sure what happened on that first placement, but you can see there it's actually lined up nicely with our foundation piece. So I'm not sure what I did wrong initially. Let's just, as a fault check, we'll do that again. So once again, we just select our module. We line it up. So you can see that it's glitching through the glass there. So you've got a bit of a gap. Move it forward once, and it lines up nicely with the red line, or the red or wall pieces. So that means our module is correctly placed. Now, this is where we've got to decide which door we want our thing to face. Now, if we wanted this to face a specific direction, once we'd actually lined it up to this foundation, we could have then rotated it whichever way, because one of the doors will be the signal point for which way we want our outputs to go. Let's see, where are we? Oh, let's say we want to take it in that direction. So all we do is we rotate it across until we get to that point. They must be lined up to the door. That's one thing, because it's the way you can see the way the corners are designed. So that lines that up nicely. And we just place that. And that's it. That's in terms of the actual primary pod structure. So if we go up here, you can see that, okay, there's no load balancing here. This is just simply feeding it straight up. And because of spacing, we've got these two on either side that are actually filtering through there. But yeah, that's it. That's our pod sorted in terms of our shell and our logistics. So you'll see that once we place our miners, they'll be nicely lined up to the outputs. Alright, let's give our... Oh, we're going to need to move out of the way a little bit. And we can save our game. Right, so we're in Satisfactory Calculator now. So there's one setting we've got to change in Satisfactory Calculator. So let's first, we got to have to load up our save game just so we can do this. All right, so you can see I've got it aligned there. So it's actually, this is our pod structure with our stairs and whatever. But the first thing we got to do is we've got to go to options. And if you haven't done this already, and we're going to look for show nodes icons on the map options tab. So show nodes icons on miners. We're going to need this because once we place the miners, the first 10 miners, we can only place 10 miners at a time, and I'll cover off why. we can only place 10, but we've got to place 2 rounds of miners. And once you place a miner, the icon disappears. So you need to enable this. Just do that, and we just give it a refresh, and F5. And we load our save game again. All right, good. So now we're prepared. Now we're prepared. Let's do some cleanup so you can see it's still enabled, so that's good. I'm going to remove some unnecessary stuff, including myself. I don't need to see any of this stuff, except for I need to bring the one. So we got additional foundations in here. So I want to hide everything except our 1 4-meter foundation. That's the key thing. So that's what we put down first. So we want to right click on that, and we go update position, and we want to grab these 3 values. We want to make sure we've got these 3 values saved up. So that is what how we're going to align our miners. Don't need to worry about the rotation angle. That's irrelevant. All right. So here we're going to right click on our copper ore node, on our copper ore icon here, and we're going to say spawn a miner. We can leave it as the default foundation. I think my zoom's a little bit off, so that's why it's giving it a little bit funky there. We can pick our miner. So I'm going to say Mark 3 if we want, or we can go Mark 2. I think I chose the Mark 3 belts. And so if you've unlocked Mark 3, I think I've only unlocked Mark 2. So we'll just use Mark 2 for now. We want to change our spawn count to 10. Now, the thing is, it's a Satisfactory calculator only allows you to spawn, even you can specify whatever number you want in there, but it will only spawn a maximum of 12 on each run. Now, because we need 20, 12 is not going to give us the spacing that we need. So what we do is we leave our rotation angle as 0 for now. We can use materials from containers if we want to. And we submit. So there you can see our miners are now available. So you can see there that it's now this node has been populated. So that would have disappeared without enabling that setting. So you can see they're evenly spaced around that center point on the node itself. So I'm just going to hide those foundations that it placed. And then from there, I'm just going to hide the miners in this case. Or no, we can actually keep the miners, and we can just zoom out a little bit so we can see the node. You right click on it again, spawn a miner. And this, oh, there we go. That's a little bit better. This time we say 10 again, but here we're going to put a rotation angle of 18. Now, there we go. The reason for 18, if you divide 360 degrees, which is your full circumference, full circle, divide that by 20, you get the value of 18. That's the rotation angle. So what we're wanting to do is these 10, we actually want to offset by 18 degrees, because the others have got an 18 degree offset, but it's actually 36 degrees. So we want the halfway point, because 360 divided by 10 is 36. So they're rotating. If we have a look here, if this was 0, this would be 36 degrees, and that would be another 36 degrees from that point, another 36 from that point, and so on and so forth. So what we want to do is we want to spawn the next set in 18 degrees off from the starting point. So they will all be spaced at 36 degrees, but they'll be starting at 18 degrees from 0. So they'll offset everything that 36 degrees plus 18, essentially. So we submit that, and there we go. Now you can see if we hide our foundations again, you can see the exits of the miners are all nicely spaced around. It's actually the perfect balance. I found this by chance, to be honest. And that will place it on there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to deselect all the foundations, so we're not going to have our main foundation visible. If that foundation is visible, you'll see that it's slightly offset to what the miners are. If we have that visible and we do our select, we're going to mess up our calculation continuously. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our select, and we're going to select all our miners. You make sure you've only got 20 miners selected. So their center point is now technically that center point over the node. We want to move the selected item's position. Submit that. And then I'm going to replace these values with those original values. Now make sure you select the minus if there is a minus. And there we go. So that, don't click submit just yet. So we're just going to untick keep selection. So this z-axis, this is the height of things. That z-axis of the foundation is actually the midpoint of the 4 meter, not the top, but the actual center of the foundation itself. So essentially 2 meters down from the foundation itself. So what we want to do is we want to add 2 meters. So because we're using a 4 meter foundation, and it's the easiest, it's the most compatible across all the nodes so that you still get some height, we need the center. So because it's 4 meters high, it takes the center point, which is 2 meters down from the surface, and we need to add those 2 meters back, because otherwise our miners are going to sit into the pod foundation and you're not going to be able to connect, and it'll look just funky. So we've added our 2 meters, we submit that, and that now realigns. That's essentially aligned to the world grid. So you can see there it's actually lined directly over the center. All right. So we're going to download our save game. That's it. That's done. That's all we need to do in Satisfactory Calculator. We save it over our tutorial. You can save it a new one if you want to, just to be careful. And we're going to go back to Satisfactory. Right. So we're going to load our save game. It will have the same date and time, so you won't see a change in terms of the UI. And there we go. Our miners are now nicely seated within the pod. So from there, so let's do the hookups. So what you can see is if I stand here, you can see it's all nicely lined up. And that's because we centered it over the world grid and all that sort of thing. So trust me, it can get very messy very quickly. So let's just grab that. We're using Mark III. So I'm going to go up. Up. So I'm just going to do our power. I'm daisy chaining everything out just to make my life easy. I think we're almost there. Yeah, there we go. So we're all hooked up. So what I want to do is I want to find... You can normally see it down at the bottom here. There we go. We just need to find one. So it's a little bit of a tight fit, but that gets it through. So 1.2 is not going to be an issue unless you, of course, you're using the daisy chain at the moment, then you'll be able to connect it up immediately. So that will sort that out. So if I turn on the power, I'm just going to save and load this in with advanced settings just to make my life easier. Yes. Advanced game settings. We're just going to say no power. And there we go. We got everything hooked up, and you'll work for a moment. We'll see our ore filtering through. There we go. And we'll see it all coming out at the top there. And that's where you connect from there out to the world. So I've got additional blueprints on my Discord for logistics, where it's actually, I've got beltways and all that sort of thing. For example, we've got the 20, and if we do our auto connect, we can just raise that up. I think, there we go. So I'm just going to run it out there. Page up, and we get it all connected. Obviously we can do micro adjustments and all the rest of it, and that brings all our resources out of the pod. So as you can see, fairly straightforward. Obviously you'll load into Satisfactory calculator and all that, but that means you've now got 20 times the capacity out of a single node. What more could you want? And that pretty much sums it up for this tutorial. I will be covering off the nitrogen gas connector or pod, or sort of those resource nodes for that liquid, and as well as oil at some stage in the future in future streams. But yeah, that'll give you everything you need for on how to get that connected. All the blueprints are available on my Discord. You can find the links in YouTube and Twitch, as well as Instagram, X, Patreon, and what's the other one? TikTok. I will be streaming to those other platforms at some stage in the future once I meet their requirements, but my primary streaming is Twitch and YouTube on a sort of a regular basis. My next stream is going to have a little bit of a bonus with regards to these pods and, you know, the nodes and whatever, where let's all say there'll be a bit of a mega print for all the nodes already connected, if you're interested. So yeah, have a look, have a play with these pods, have a play with everything. As like I said, everything's on my Discord. Find the server link on my profiles, and yeah, come and join me and let's have some fun and overutilizing the world. I'm aiming to use most of the nodes for pods and to be able to do my big build and the current build that I'm actually doing. You can see that on my streams, but this will at least allow you to be able to establish a much greater capacity without having to run millions of belts all over the place from multiple nodes, pretty much taking one node to do the job of 20, just to make life nice and easy and a little bit of fun, and it looks pretty good too. So I do thank you for watching. I hope this has been informative, and please let me know if you've got any questions or if you need any clarifications. Yeah, come join me on my Discord, and we'll see you in the next stream, hopefully. Thank you, and bye for now.